Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again I'm coming to you with another range report. And today's range report is brought to you by my very generous patrons and my good friend Jack, who once again has lent another one of his guns to the channel for review. And today's range report is on a Smith Wesson 1911 commander-sized Gunsite model inspired pistol. Now, the Gunsite Academy was founded by Jeff Cooper, and pretty much if you don't know who he is, you guys need to go look him up. If you shoot pistols today, the way that you shoot your pistol two-handed using the Weaver stance is because of Jeff Cooper. He was one of the most influential modern gun writers and trainers of the 20th century and developed something called the modern technique. And so we owe a lot to him. And his academy is called Gunsite. Well, he ended up selling it to another company a while ago, and unfortunately he passed away in 2006. But this is the Gunsite inspired model 1911 commander sized by Smith Wesson. Very beautiful model, as you can see here. Love those wood grips. A lot of people like the commander size. This is chambered in 45 ACP. Let's get another look at this on this side. It even has the Gunsite logo engraved there on the slide, as well as the grip on this side as well. Okay, so what do I know about this model and what makes it special beyond just the branding? Well, it is still just a 1911, and I'm not saying that in any type of disparaging way. It's a 1911. It's gonna be an awesome and a great gun. Everyone loves the 1911. In fact, many people say it's America's gun. Now, the styling of this gun reminds me a lot of another gun that I personally own, and this is the Wiley Clapp Edition Commander from Colt. I believe they marketed this as the 21st century Commander. It also has an alloy frame, and many of the options on this gun are very similar to the Smith & Wesson Gunsite model, including the Novak sights with the bead front sight, the brass bead front sight. And the one thing though that is different between these two models and most 1911s in general is this particular Smith & Wesson has something that I do not like on 1911s, and that is an external extractor. So I'll show the side of the slide there, and you should see the external extractor. Now you're asking, why don't I like external extractors? Well, I'm one of those people that believe that John Browning got most of it right when he designed this pistol. And one of the most integral parts to making any 1911 run smoothly is the extractor. You can go online to many forums and they'll talk about extractor adjustments, extractor spring weights, all this kind of stuff to get it to run right. And for the most part, when it comes to a standard 1911 using the internal factory extractor, it's just the way to go. And I don't understand why some companies want to mess with John Browning's genius and create a design like this. Now, I know that most modern guns use external extractors, so why not adapt it to the 1911? Well, I knew I was going to have some issues with this because when I picked this gun up from my friend Jack, he said, expect it to shoot brass back in your face when it ejects. And lo and behold, the gun does. Like, he gave me a whole talk about recoil spring weights. He even said that he has a lighter recoil spring on order for this particular gun to see if it fixes the issue. I want to say the factory spring was like 18 pounds, but he has one coming in that's a lot lighter than that, 16 or 15 pounds, and supposedly that's going to fix this issue in that the factory recoil spring in this is just simply too sprung and doesn't allow the slide to come back with enough force to eject the cartridge to the 3 o'clock or the 4 o'clock position, and instead it comes right back in the 6 o'clock position and hits your face. So that's one of the things I was saying I don't like about these external extractors. They are just so much more picky, and you have to be a lot more precise when it comes to the weight of the recoil springs and even the spring that holds in the extractor. I think John Browning just got it right on day one. So that's what I know about this pistol, but let's talk about the things I like and don't like. Well, as I mentioned, this gun reminds me a lot of my Colt Wiley Clap edition, and I can tell you this is one of my favorite 1911s. I absolutely love the commander size. I love the alloy frame. I love the front and rear cocking serrations, the Novak sights, the beaver tail safety, the checkering on both the front and the back strap. This is just a well-designed firearm. It's pretty much everything a 1911 you would want. And this gun offers pretty much the exact same thing with a couple of differences. Some things you guys are going to like, and one of that is going to be the extended safety. I know people are going to like that. On the Wiley Clap, you only get the original 1911 small safety, but a lot of people are going to like that. You do get a combat-style hammer. I think that looks very attractive. The gun seems to be well built. I wouldn't expect less from Smith & Wesson. The slide to frame lockup is nice and tight. When I dry fire this here on the bench, and of course I will safety check it and make sure there is no round in the chamber. That is a really good feeling trigger, which most 1911s are. Maybe a little bit longer reset than I would want, but overall, really nice, great clean break. I think, as I said, Smith & Wesson did just an absolute fantastic job on this particular firearm. Now, what are the things I don't like about this gun? Well, the only thing I can say is that external extractor. That's the only issue I have with this. Besides that, I think it's absolutely a beautiful and fantastically built and designed firearm. Well, I gotta be honest with you, there is something else which some people might say is not really a gripe, and it has to do with these grips. When it comes to 1911 grips, I like to have a little bit of checkering on them, something to grab onto. These are for the most part smooth wood. And yes, as I mentioned, they are engraved with both the Smith & Wesson logo on this side and the Gunsite logo on this side. They just don't provide a lot of purchase or grippiness. And I think when I shoot a 1911, I want a little bit more grip, a little bit more checkering on those. I'm a big fan of the look and the feel of the traditional double diamond style grips on 1911s. So that's what I know and what I think about from just handling this gun here on the bench. But let's get this thing to the range. I'm really excited to shoot this thing. So for my first magazine, I'm setting the target out at 7 yards. We're gonna put one magazine through this thing, see how it shoots, and what I think. All right, so I am pretty happy with that group. And the trigger, as I said, is pretty darn good. I'm just shooting it a little bit low. Now, the gun is a little bit snappy, and that's because this uses an alloy frame. The history of the commander size 1911 goes all the way back to the early 50s, I believe 1952, and that was the first time the US military ever thought about going from the 45 to the 9mm. And when they contracted companies to build them guns for trials, Colt decided to shrink the 1911 just a little bit, chamber it a 9mm, and to reduce weight, created the frame out of something they called Colt alloy, which essentially is just an alloy of aluminum. And after the military decided to stick with the 45, Colt decided to go to civilian production with the commander size 1911 and offered in 38 Super, 9mm, and 45 ACP. Now, the lightweight commander as we know it today has one disadvantage, and that is aluminum wears at a much quicker rate than steel does. And so I've actually talked to a number of different gunsmiths who build 1911s in all sizes. Now, Colt and other companies do make guns in this size with steel frames, and everybody that I have ever talked to that knows anything about building 1911s says if you like the Commander 1911 and want to carry a Commander 1911, you want to carry an alloy frame, but go to the range with a steel frame. These frames will crack over time, especially shooting 45 ACP. And because of the lighter weight of the frame, they're going to be a little bit snappier. So if you own a fine piece like this, you don't want to put thousands upon thousands of rounds through these, unless you got a backup. And this gun was snappy just because it uses the lighter weight frame. So if this was the steel frame, I think it'd be even a much more softer shooting gun. But it's not super snappy. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining. It's just something to be aware of if you are a more seasoned 1911 shooter and you shoot an alloyed frame 1911, you're going to go, that kicks just a little bit more. All right, so now let's go to what I refer to as the accuracy portion of the range report, and that's where I'm going to double the distance here of the target, shooting for the head on this IDPA target, and see how this group opens up. One of the things I mentioned I absolutely love about this pistol is these Novak sights. I really like this design, especially with the brass bead in the front sight. So let's see how I do. Target will be set at 14 yards, and once again, I'm going for the head. Alright, so this gun is actually making me look like a decent shot when I'm not. We all know that. We've seen my other range reports on other guns, and sometimes my groupings are pretty big. This thing shoots absolutely fantastic and very, very accurate. Now, if you go back and look at that footage, you'll also see a lot of those shell casings are coming back and hitting me in the head. It's actually making shooting the gun not as fun as it would be, because as I said, the gun seems to be really, really accurate and I shoot it well. It's just no fun being hit in the head with that ejecting brass. But now that we know what the problems are and I've talked about why they're happening, I also want to give my wife Becky a shot at this. She likes 1911s. I'm curious what her thoughts are going to be on this, and with the type of shooter she is she going to have any ejection issues, and what's going to happen when it comes to her feel, when it comes to the grip. She's not a big fan of snappy guns, and as I said, this gun's a little bit snappy, but let's see how she does. So she said she thought it was okay. It wasn't her favorite 1911 that she's ever shot. She was really bothered by the fact that all that brass was coming back and pretty much hitting her on the forehead. She also complained about the grip texture, kind of like what I was saying in the opening. She wishes that it had a little bit more texture. It slipped in her hands just a little bit too much. But overall, she said it's okay, just wasn't her favorite 1911. Alright, so now we're going to move on to what I refer to as the defensive use, and that's essentially where I'm going to act like this is my carry gun. and being a single stack 45, well, I'm probably going to have to use a magazine change because of the lower capacity of a single stack 45. So I'm going to try to empty the magazine, drop it, reinsert a new magazine, get the gun back in action, and see how I do. All right, so we had a little bit of an issue there. If you noticed, the slide didn't hold back on what I thought was the last round. But it turned out I pulled the trigger and the hammer didn't fall. I'm not really sure what happened. I don't know if it's because maybe this gun has a little bit longer reset. I'm not 100% sure. I know that I pulled that trigger and the hammer didn't fall. But I kept going, I reloaded the next magazine, and I got the gun back in action. So I'm not really sure what happened. I'm shooting kind of fast, not really thinking about proper technique, but as I said, this is the defensive use. If I gotta use this gun as fast as I possibly can and defend my life, well, I wanna give this thing another shot. I'm almost 100% sure that was gonna be user error. So let me load up these magazines again and try it again. All right, so it happened again, and that really perplexed me. I couldn't figure out why. I know how to shoot a gun fast. I know I pulled that trigger and the hammer didn't fall. Well, I spent a little bit more time here at the house trying to figure out why in the world did I pull the trigger, the hammer didn't fall. There's nothing about this gun that seems broken or wrong. And then it dawned on me, and it's something that only a few other guns besides the 1911 have, and if you don't have a secure grip on the gun, you can have an issue with, and that is the grip safety. Right here on the back, I think 1911s and Springfield XDs are pretty much the only guns that are super popular right now that have these types of grip safeties, and yes, there are other models. You don't have to tell me in the comment section below, but these are the most popular. And I noticed on this particular model, just fooling around here at the house, this grip safety and the spring behind it, the sear spring behind it, is really strong. I noticed that it takes a lot of pressure as compared to other 1911s to depress that grip safety. So when I hold my Colt, this safety is really easy to actuate. I don't have to use a lot of force at all. And that's the way it is with most 1911s. With this one, that spring is pretty darn stout, and it dawned on me what was going on. During the quick recoil action of shooting this gun fast, when I pulled the trigger, the gun goes bang, of course you get the recoil, my hand and my grip was coming off the back just a little bit, and I mean just a little bit, that now I can't pull it. I can't pull that trigger and get the hammer to drop, even though I have a pretty darn good grip on that gun. I really have to make sure the webbing of my thumb is right in that beaver tail to get that hammer to fall. And I think that's what was causing that issue. Now, I went and looked also at my other 1911s, and they all are Colt. None of them have a spring that is this stiff. Now, this could be a great safety feature because you really have to have your hand on that gun if you want it to go bang. But as you saw me trying to shoot this thing fast, it might be an issue if you're panicking. Maybe your hand's a little bit wet because you're sweaty and you're under stress, who knows? That might cause a malfunction or the gun not to go bang when you want it to go bang. But that's what I discovered about this, and so I may have to dock just a little bit of points for that, but I do know that's something that can be adjusted by a gunsmith. All right, so what are my final thoughts on the Smith Wesson 1911 Gunsite Edition Commander? Well, this really is a fantastic 1911. There are two things as you have already watched the review to this point, that I think needs to be adjusted. Smith & Wesson needs to go back to a standard internal extractor. John Browning got it right from day one. And they need to adjust the spring weight on this grip safety. It does not need to be that stiff, that stout. It potentially could cause an issue in a self-defense scenario, just like I demonstrated a moment ago. But everything else about this gun, it is awesome. It's super accurate, it's beautiful, it's well constructed, it's finished great. It comes from a fantastic company, Smith & Wesson. You just can't complain about anything except those two items. And for some people, that might not be a big issue. As I said, once Jack gets this spring weight thing figured out with the recoil spring, it might eject absolutely perfect, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he has to say when he gets that new spring in. So, on my star system, how would I rate the 1911 Commander Gunsite Edition by Smith & Wesson? Well, I'm going to give it a solid 4.5 stars out of 5. You guys already know what I'm griping about. The grip safety and that external extractor. Both things can be fixed and addressed, but I think they should work right out of the box. This gun should not have ejection issues with the factory weighted spring, and this grip safety should not have to be adjusted. But everything else is absolutely fantastic and super accurate, and I appreciate the fact it made me look like a better shot than I actually am. So for that, I give it bonus points. So 4.5 stars out of 5. A true winner and a fantastic 1911. Man, these are just awesome guns for being a design that is over 100 years old. And that is a testament to John Browning's genius. So there you go. My Rage Report, Smith & Wesson, Commander 1911, Gunsite Edition. What do you guys think? Do you own a 1911 with an external extractor? Do you have issues like this one does? I would love to know in the comments section below. So, as always, thanks for watching.